Hi, everybody. Will here with this month's edition of the Coach's Corner with George Alston. So you better listen up.
Coach's Corner with Will Alexander and George Alston. Brought to you by ProPlan and Canine Chronicles.
Hi, everybody. Will here with this month's Coach's Corner. And here's George, the master. How are you today, George?
I'm doing great. I am feeling great for an old toad.
You always say that.
Well, I want to carry on with what we did last month. I did last month on training of the dogs and how I felt the handler should adapt to the dog rather than the dog adapting to the handler.
Right.
Well, I want to carry it one step further. And I mentioned last month that you should also train your dog to do different things because that dog is going to grow mentally and physically. So you have to look on how the changes are taking place. As an example, when I was showing Marquis, I felt that his gait was changing on me, and I couldn't. So I got my assistant, Doug Holloway, God rest his soul, one of the greatest handlers out there. He really he was a great gentleman and man. Anyway, he ran Marquis for me up and down, and I said, make his head a little higher, make it a little lower. And I saw what was going. He was changing from a 2-beat stride into a 4-beat stride. And I said, that's not going to work. So I said, Dougie, drop his head a half an inch. Now take him down and back. That 1/2 inch made a difference between a 2-beat stride and a 4-beat stride.
Oh, head care changes everything.
So we had to change it. Okay? I had a Springer Spaniel, my first paying client. It was owned. There was a handler that was working out of this gentleman's kennel. I'm not going to use names. And he didn't like this dog. Well, the guy that owned the kennel and the breeder, he called me. He says, George, will you show him? I said, sure. I mean, I didn't have any dogs to show. I had just been licensed by the Kennel Club. So I get this dog, and he was bloody ugly. But I trimmed him. His name was El Tero Scotch Flag. And if you saw him in the bathtub, he was one ugly sucker. But he grew enough hair that you could trim him and sculpture him and whatever. And so I started showing him, and I won a best in show with him. And I showed him on a Resco lead. Well, he started to quit on me. He just didn't. He said, I don't like this. And so I had to look and see what was happening. And I remembered that when I would play with him and fool around with him, if I pulled his hair on his chest, he'd get all flustered and he'd start chasing me. I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. So I ended up pulling on his chest hair. Well, that was good for one thing, one straight down and back. And it was good for one time around the ring. Then I'd have to pull it again if I had to get around the second time around the ring. I won 4 more best in shows with the sucker. Just because.
How was his chest hair?
Huh?
How was his chest hair?
It didn't grow a whole lot of chest hair.
I'm sure.
But we did a lot of we won a bunch of specialties and whatever, and actually even beat Sally Lynn's Classic.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
at one specialty show, Mr. Cooper was a little perturbed, but Dick was always a great sportsman and whatever. He was
Oh, yeah. That's
he was a great, probably the greatest sporting dog handler that ever walked, and he was one of my people that I really looked up to because of what he did. Okay.
I remember one day Bobby took me over to meet him because I had never met him. I'd seen him, but I'd never met him, and it's still in my head meeting him. It was such a joy to meet him. So,
Oh, what was great was he always we fought like cats and dogs and whatever, and I went out to Chicago and beat him at the specialty or Scotch Flag beat him in the specialty, and then Scotch Flag ends up winning the sporting group in Chicago. And he came over and congratulated me. He was always just a super gentleman.
yeah, he exudes gentlemanly behavior. He surely did.
Yeah, I never heard him say a bad thing about anybody. Okay, let's get back our thing. When I was working for Jenny Forsythe, we were showing Sean Lee's Fanfare. And he was the first Irish setter that ever had the hair. I let the hair grow in the front part of the ears to soften his expression. And he was the first Irish setter that Jenny showed for
Mrs. Porter.
yes, Mrs. Porter. So thank you. You're my memory. So he went out and he started doing a little bit of winning, and so he was not going to do, and Jenny was going to send him back, and so she said, "You go show the sucker today." So I took him up to the ring, and I was eating some potato chips, and I took the package and put it in my pocket, and it crinkled. Well, this dog just went right out of his socks. And I go in the ring, and this sucker just goes around the ring, drags me around the ring. And Janie's in the next ring showing a boxer. She says, I come out, she said, "What the hell did you do to that dog to make him do that?" And I showed her with the crinkly. She always showed that dog in the ring with a potato chip package in her pocket, making crinkly noises, and he won like I think 10 or 12 more best in shows. But you have to be able to look and watch the dog, and when he changes, how you're going to get it. Out of it. Bangaweb Sahara Crest was the same way. He was a great boxer. And Harry Sangster showed him on the West Coast, and he did a bunch of winning. And Nate Levine got him back, and he did a little bit of winning with him. But Nate was a little perturbed, and he just stopped showing. And my parents and I think I was 10 years old, 11 years old, we go up to Nate Levine's kennel because my parents wanted to breed the Bangaway. And I guess maybe I was 12. And so Nate brings the dog out, and he's standing there looking like a lump on a log. I mean, he just looked terrible. And Nate said, I'm sending this sucker back. He says, I can't put up with this. As he's taking the dog back to the kennel, his grandkids had been there playing jacks outside on the parking lot. And they left a little rubber ball there, a jacks ball that you play jacks.
Yeah.
Well, Nate tripped over the jacks and he kicked the ball across the yard, and bang, he hit the end of that lead and froze. And that was the making of 125 Best in Shows, because Nate then went on and he carried several little round balls in his pocket, which a lot of the boxer handlers, including Dick Baum, always had a pocket full of red balls. And that's how that got started. But that Nate changed in the middle of midstream because he was able to read and he adjusted to bang away. The same thing happened with when I was working for Bill Traynor. We were showing a collie named Stony Kirk's Reflection. And he was probably the most beautiful collie you've ever seen in your life. He had natural ears. We didn't have to put lead in the ears to make them flip over in the front. And it was just, he grew hair. He was gorgeous, but he wouldn't show. And we would go into the ring. He hated the show ring. He hated, so Bill couldn't get his ears up in the ring. Well, a collie with ears that go out like a bat, that ain't good.
Not going to cut it.
So we're up at the Sportsman Show in Canada, one of my favorite shows of all time. I loved going to those shows in Toronto.
Yeah, me too. They're wonderful shows.
Oh, it was absolutely fantastic. We were there for a week. And the Canadian people, it almost made me want to emigrate to Canada. I almost became one of your neighbors up there. So that would have been a hell of a thing, you know. So we have Jamie up on the table, and he's just being in a lump, and he's laying there sleeping and on top of the table, and I mean, he just had no enthusiasm for dog shows whatsoever. And this guy walks back by with his package, and Jamie jumps up on the table and bangs his ears. And Bill says, "You go chase that sucker, find out what he's got in that package." He had moose meat.
Oh.
In those days, at the Sportsman Show, they were allowed to sell moose meat, elk meat, different kinds of meat from which you couldn't do in the States.
No, game animals, yeah.
But they were allowed to sell game animal meat for the next 2 years or 3 years. As long as we were showing, Jamie, we had a package of moose meat delivered once a month from Canada.
No, jeez.
Dog ended up the greatest winning collie of all time and held that record for 15, 20 years. And I think he went second in the group at the Garden, which was unheard of for a collie to do that. And he ended up a great show dog.
All because of moose meat.
All because of moose meat.
I once had moose stroganoff. It was wonderful.
I have never had it.
It's been some very good.
I've had elk meat and I've had deer stroganoff, but I've never had moose.
No, it was wonderful. I've had moose burgers, moose stroganoff. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Then there was a time when I had a young lady, Linda Wallace, who was working out of my kennel. She was assistant for Terry Stacy. When Terry went to work for Boss Bo, she was sort of left out in limbo. I said, "I've got space in my kennel. Do you get on your feet and everything?" And she had a dog to show, a black and tan cocker named Peeping Tom. And she tried showing him on, and she did a little bit of winning with him, but he wouldn't show. And American cockers have a problem with tonsils. It's an inherited thing, and the cocker breed, they take the tonsils out when they're puppies. Well, this dog that she got, he was a year and a half, 2 years old. If you took the tonsils out, you do him with anesthesia, he's going to blow his coat. So you can't do it. So she was going to send the dog home. And I said, well, how come he's out here running around looking really super? And she says, I don't know. I said, why don't you try him on a nylon choke loose lead and put the lead all the way down below the tonsils so the lead doesn't hit the tonsils. And she did that, and she started to do some winning with him. And then the owner decided to send it up to Teddy Young, one of the great cocker handlers. He had an opening for a dog. Well, Teddy gets the dog. He puts him on a tight lead. The dog quits, and he calls me, and he says, George, how did Linda get this dog to show like she did before? I said, show him on a loose lead, nylon choke down on his shoulders. I think he ended up #1 sporting dog.
Oh, wow.
And all because we changed in midstream. Another great dog, Mr. Stewart's Cheshire Winslow, the English foxhound. I originally got him, and I went up to learn about English foxhounds because mentally they're a totally different breed. And all the huntsmen and everything that I read and everything, you have to be very, very strict showing an English foxhound. And when I first started showing them, I was very strict, tight lead, racked them, and I was doing some winning, but nothing really spectacular. And I'm saying, this isn't going to go well. And I'm in a motel room with the hound, and he jumped up on the bed, and I had a washcloth, and I threw it at him. I said, get off the bed. He grabbed that and caught the washcloth. And I said, whoa, let's try that again. And I took it from him, and I threw him, and he loved to catch. And this was his thing. So I started showing him with hot dogs that I would throw and he would catch. And he thought that was the greatest thing. And I showed him from 7 foot away. I could train him to do anything as long as I would take him to catch. And he ended up winning 26 all-breed best in shows, and one of the greatest pure show dogs of any breed that ever walked. And it's all because I adapted to that particular dog.
Yeah.
Now, also, too, you have to adapt the trimming and grooming of the dog with the way they are growing. There was a Gordon Setter, Yankaraka Plenty, one of my first breeds. He was built like an Irish setter.
Hang on a second.
Okay, I think that's enough. I think we get it across that you have to keep reading your dog during the campaign as a special, because he's going to change, just like you change as you grow, as you are influenced by different things. Dogs are folks. Dogs get, people joke about I call dogs are folks, but they learn as they grow and they mature.
Well, there's no question.
Mentally and physically. And it's unbelievable on how a dog changes and how you have to adapt to how that dog changes. Otherwise, you're just stuck. That's the reason why you'll get a young handler take a dog out in the first 6 months. You say, oh, my God, I'm going to have to look at this dog for the next 4 years. And
Doesn't last that long.
All of a sudden, he can't win out of a paper bag because
Well, I know there'd be instances up here where a certain handler will get a dog and everybody go, "Oh, what are you going to do about this?" I said, 6 months from now it won't be a problem.
absolutely,
You know?
because they're not smart enough to change. That's something that I think I taught you that.
Oh, there's
Um,
no question. And we had to I had to change midstream with almost all my specials dogs because they get bored. If you don't keep it entertaining to them, they get bored and you lose them. So,
well, this is something I used to do. Is I would always in the group rings, I'd try to teach them different tricks, and the dogs enjoy learning
no,
how
there's
to
no
do
question.
different things. And I know you called me about an Irish setter. I think it was beef. You called me about, and I said you got to change. And you took off and went another what 2 years with him after that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And he did his biggest winning the year after. So
Yeah. So you learned, and that's one of the things that maybe this will get the young folks to learn how to do this.
that's the hardest part, like George, is getting them to change.
That's right.
The
That's right.
dogs are easy because they want to do it.
Yeah, because they're hot shots. They just came out of juniors and they know how all the things to do. And unfortunately, we have some old handlers that still don't know how to change.
No, well, let's hope some of them learn. So
Oh,
keeps good dogs around for a while.
yeah, great to see you again, buddy. We'll
Good
look
to see you,
forward to
George.
next month. We got something else going on.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Well then, until next month, George. I'm sure we'll talk beforehand, but I'll see you then.
It was great, buddy.
Good lessons from George, and he'll be back. Trust me. Can't get rid of him. See you then.